Hi, everyone. Welcome to our panel, Youth, Our Future. I'm excited to join World Humanitarian Forum for the second year in a row. Last year, I managed to participate at the forum in London, and this year, virtually calling in from Nairobi, Kenya. And I'm excited. I mean, I wish we were all in New York to meet in person, but again, I'm glad that we are doing this virtually and we're able to connect and share our stories. So our session today, our roundtable session today is on promoting young leaders for action. And I'm joined by incredible young leaders from across the globe. They're doers in their community. They're championing different causes. They're working with young people, mobilizing and creating change in their communities. Approximately, we have 1.8 billion young people between the ages of 10 and 24. This being the decade of action, we as young people have to continue ensuring that we are at the forefront in the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals. I agree that it is important that young people should be provided the necessary knowledge, skills, and opportunities so as to continue being great change agents and global citizens. And today, again, as I've said, I'm honored to be moderating this exciting panel panelists from across the globe, and they will be sharing with us the work that they're doing, some of the challenges, some of the successes, some of their advice from the work that they've done on the ground. So I'll give it to my panelists in less than 1 minute. Please introduce yourself and share with us which of the SDGs you're working on.
Hello, everyone. My name is Siddarth Satish, and I'm a youth ambassador for Ariel Foundation International, and also the founder of two nonprofit initiatives, PEP Magazine and Memoirs. The SDGs that I'm currently working on are SDG number 3, 4, 5, 8, 9, 10, 11, 16, and 17.
Thank you so much, Siddarth. I feel like you're working on all the SDGs.
Hi, my name is Sophie Dowd, and I'm the Chief Executive Officer of the Future Leaders Network. We're a not-for-profit organisation aimed at discovering and developing the next generation of social, political and economic leaders in the United Kingdom. Our work spans all of the SDGs, but we're particularly passionate about 8, work and economic growth, 9, industry, innovation and infrastructure, and 16, strong institutions.
Thank you, Sophie.
Hello, everyone. My name is Franco Perez. I am the Global VP Partnerships for IASEC. IASEC is the world's largest youth-led organization, and we are working in IASEC to develop and achieve peaceful fulfillment of humankind's potential. In 2015, as IASEC, we made a commitment with the United Nations to mobilize young people towards the achievement of the SDGs. We actually work in different initiatives towards all the SDGs, but we are particularly passionate right now in this context on SDG number 8, and especially from my role on SDG number 17.
Thank you, Franco.
Cool. Hi, everyone. My name is Sephora Biglari. I'm the Director of Community at One Young World, which is the global forum for young leaders. So we have a mission to identify, promote, and connect the world's most impactful young leaders, representing every country and every sector in the world. So now we have a community of over 12,000 ambassadors based, as I said, in every country, including Mete, who is on this call. But we really believe in effective and responsible leadership, and so we're on a mission to make sure that we can uplift and legitimize the work that they are doing. So in terms of SDGs, our community represents every SDG that is out there, but I would say partnerships for the goals, goal 17 is most critical to us because the power of partnerships is what really propels our work forward. Thank you.
Fantastic, thank you. Matt?
Hey everyone, my name is Mete. I'm from London, as you can see the British flag right behind me. So I've got 2 different hats on. So I'm a counsellor, so I represent an area in London. And I also run a charity called My Life, My Say, which aims to empower young people to participate in democracy. And we work very closely with Safoora and the One Young World team, and also with Sophie as well from the Future Leaders Network. Primarily in my role as a counsellor, I'm specifically focused on goal number 8 and economic growth, in my role specifically around building an inclusive economy for Hackney, and for our organisation specifically around building strong institutions, making sure that much fit for purpose for young people to participate in democracy.
Fantastic. Thank you, Mete. Joseph?
Hello, I'm Joseph. I'm also in the UK, but I'm up in Manchester. I am the chair of the EY Foundation's Youth Advisory Board. The EY Foundation is a charity that works with young people in order to support them into good employment. It works with people who are eligible for free school meals, so it's the poor young people from the poorest households. And what we try and do is give them the skills and the opportunities that are necessary to give them a head start on their careers that they may not have in the same way as people from other backgrounds. So the SDGs that we're working on are number 8, decent work and economic growth, and number 10, reducing inequalities.
Thank you all. I feel like we are all addressing the SDGs, and that makes me feel comfortable that the world is moving towards the right direction, having you guys as the captains and the steering wheel championing the SDGs. So I'm going to start with you, Siddarth. You're the youngest change maker on our session today. You have done some incredible work in your community through the 2 nonprofits that you founded focused on health, wellness, social justice, and education. Why is student mobilization important as we enter into this decade of action to ensure that we achieve the SDGs? And how have you been able to reshape the views of the students and have them join your causes?
Thank you, Ms. Onano, for that question. So first, to tackle the first part of that question, which is centering around why student mobilization is important, especially as we enter into 2020, I believe this is one of the most important SDGs and concepts to engage in, just because many of the youth are now going to become adults as we move into 2020. And we're going to see more and more educated youth come across and take action and take advantage of many of the initiatives if we do empower them and give them the resources to succeed. So I think that's one of the major reasons why I do what I do. And I believe that youth empowerment and empowerment of people like me is very, very important. Because as we move forward into the future, we are responsible for taking the positives from generations past and pushing that forward and making sure the things that could have been worked on are worked on in the future. So I think that's one of the key points that resonates with me as youth for empowering people like me and communities that are filled with people like me. And in terms of what I've done so far in order to facilitate student mobilization and youth development and reshape that view, it's just starting things that typically youth wouldn't start. And that's with my nonprofit initiatives, especially with my magazine and my health and lifestyle nonprofit, which is Memoirs. I focused on 2 fields that typically have very low youth representation, especially when you come to something like health. It's expected that you have an MD or a PhD before you decide to take action. So while we don't have all of the members of our board don't have MDs or PhDs, many of us are still in high school and completing our secondary education, we're finding different ways that we can help the elderly with Alzheimer's and dementia. Without having to create a cure, we focus on compassion and empathy and forming that empathy link between people. That's why we have over 700 youth across the world create letters and make memory boxes for the elderly. And we're also making curriculum, which is advised by people with PhDs and MDs, but really led by students who have that basic secondary school knowledge, but that drive to make a change. And when it came to my magazine, PEP stands for Politics, Economics, and Philosophy. I remember vividly when I was 10 years old that I would get those Time magazine for kids in school, and I would always see articles about whaling, fishing, and other scientific concepts. But I never really learned a lot about the economics behind things, philosophy or politics. And those are the topics that really interested in me in high school. So I decided, why not change this and reshape the way in which youth look at these concepts? So what my magazine does is high school students write for middle school and elementary school, so K through 8th grade students, and help them understand the political situation of our country, the philosophy and various philosophical concepts and theories out there, and economic concepts as well. Because I think all of these concepts really give everything its meaning, especially with politics becoming more and more polarized. It's important that people maintain an unbiased view. With economics giving rise to everything that's happening right now in times of COVID, it's important that they understand just very basic concepts. And philosophy just gives many aspects of life meaning. And I think that's important to understand at a very young age. So ultimately, what I try to do with most of my initiatives is expose things that are typically unavailable to youth to them, because I know if I had these opportunities earlier on, it would be a much different forum that I would be speaking on today.
Wow, fantastic. I'm very inspired by everything that you've been able to do at the age of 15. So what is your advice on ensuring that every voice in the community is included in the fight for social justice? Because I understand that's something that you're very passionate about, and you've been doing a lot of community mobilization in your area.
Yeah, so this is one aspect that I really feel very strongly about people of color and minorities really getting that experience and opportunity to explain themselves and provide their perspective, which is typically something not offered in many areas. Because to come onto many forums and start various initiatives, A, you need time, and B, you need to make sure that every other aspect of your life is taken care of. And I've been lucky enough that I have really hardworking parents who have supported me, that I don't have to worry about other things and I can focus on things like this. But what I try to do is make sure that every single initiative is catering towards minorities and minority representation. So with my magazine, the entire magazine is gender fluid and gender androgynous, which means that it's not blue for boys and pink for girls, but any color can represent who you are. So this serves to boost LGBTQ+ representation, gender fluid representation in fields of politics, economics, and philosophy, because historically, very few people from these communities have been given the chance to enter these fields without severe amounts of discrimination. So while I can't change the attitudes of adults right now, I can definitely change the attitudes of future adults who are going to enter the workforce in the future. And with the entire nonprofit centered around memoirs, we focus on communities that have been impoverished for extended periods of time by giving women in areas like Africa and South America the opportunity to gain medical knowledge and push them out of the traditional roles that people see them in these communities and really empower them. But rather than just give education, we actually also provide training and take them through the entire process to get a job and do things of that sort with our adult advisory board, which are those members who have PhDs and MDs who help us around in the process. So I think partnership between the adults and the youth is something I've focused on and something that's really helped me aspire and create social justice.
Thank you so much. I totally agree with you when it comes to the intergenerational dialogue and learning. It's important for us to learn from the older generation, take what's good that we can apply to our current generation, and then can be taken to the next generation. And also, I totally agree with you on the points that you raised on the importance of training young people, because I think most of the time we talk about empowerment, but we forget the aspect of training so that they can acquire the skills, they can acquire the knowledge, because that's what empowerment actually comes from in the broader context. So thank you again, Siddarth, for the incredible work that you're doing at only 15 years old. Keep up the good job. Sophie, you're my next. So you have been a strong advocate for youth inclusion in this decision-making process and participation. From your experience, what do you think young people should do or continue to do to ensure that they have a seat at key decision-making tables? And you have had an interesting leadership journey or career, if I may say so, in public sector, in the public service. What has been some of the challenges and how did you overcome them so that other young people who are interested in venturing into the public sector, public service can learn from?
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for the questions, Vivian. Plenty to discuss there, and it's great to see everyone on this call today, so thank you for having me. So I'll take the first half of your question first, around what more can we do to enable young people to have a seat at the decision-making table. And the first thing is keep fighting for those seats at the decision-making table. They are still far too few and far between. So here at the Future Leaders Network, we support young leaders to represent the United Kingdom at the G7 and G20 Youth Summits. These are the official youth engagement groups for the Group of 7 and Group of 20 Heads of State Summits. And This is really important because it puts youth participation and the youth voice at the heart of international decision-making processes. And for us, that doesn't happen enough still. And we really have to keep creating these mechanisms to make that happen. Here in the UK, we will be hosting the G7 presidency in 2021. And I was on a call just this morning with the Cabinet Office in Her Majesty's government, talking about how we can make sure that youth participation is embedded in that presidency. And that doesn't just mean having a seat at the summit. The youth voice at the very end isn't enough. It's about integration of the youth voice right from the very start. So right from the beginning of January, we'll be working really closely with young people all across the United Kingdom to make sure that their views and their voices are heard in this highest level of international decision making. The second is actually around equipping young people with the skills they need to succeed when they're in that seat. So there's no point in setting young people up to fail. They need to be equipped with the skills to succeed. And we really focus on that in our Future Leaders Network Academy. We strongly believe that leadership and participation are skills that can be learned through practice, in the same way that elite sports are learned through practice. And yet we constantly see that that practice is always given to people who have the experience in the first place. So it's a vicious cycle. So our big aim is around equipping young people with the core skills they need to be leaders, whether that is finding their own personal purpose, creating an institutional purpose, whether that is communicating with people on an individual or on a system level, as well as understanding the powers of influence. And for us, that's a really important part. To tackle that vicious circle, you have to get in right at the center, and you have to equip young people with the skills they need to succeed. The final thing I guess I'd say to keep that seat at the decision-making table is young people have to recognize other young leaders. And sometimes we don't do that enough. So when we have kind of youth leadership conferences or youth leadership summits, we often get established leaders in to speak to us. But actually all that does is reinforces the norm that to be a leader, you have to be a bit older, you have to be a bit wiser. And I fundamentally don't think that leadership is something like wisdom teeth that just suddenly sprout when you hit a certain age. Actually, leadership is all about, as I say, those skills, and they exist across the community and across different age groups. So we really focus on elevating young leaders. So we have a conference in November. We are putting young leaders on the same stage as established leaders and making sure they are viewed as equally as seriously as any other leaders in the sector. So that's my response to kind of what can we do to keep that seat at the decision-making table. Your other question was around my role in the public sector. So by background, I am a civil servant. I've worked for the UK government for the last 8 years in a variety of social policy roles. And I'm particularly passionate about bringing evidence-based decision-making into government, which I'm sure is very salient right now in the current context we're in. I think there's two things. So one is, you know, when I was at school, I was told, don't go into the public sector. It's terribly paid. It's incredibly boring. Go be something more interesting instead. And particularly coming from an Indian background, my dad really felt that the only roles for me were a banker, a lawyer, or a doctor, and anything else was completely off the cards. And so something that I do is I spend a lot of time going back and speaking to children and young adults about the choices they have available to them. The public sector is an incredible place to have your impact, to have a real impact on the lives of individuals. And in particular, we need more young people from a variety of backgrounds. We don't just need people who've studied politics. I really believe in the power of multidisciplinarity. So scientists, engineers, linguists, you name it. Anyone can come to government with experience, because if there's one thing we have experience of, every single one of us, it is of being governed. We all live in countries or states or nations where we are influenced by the government around us. And actually the whole point is to bring that lived experience, and that's what makes a richer policy making experience. So I do a lot of outreach work, and both to young children and adults, but also to my peers, because no matter what stage of life you're at, you can always work more closely with other institutions to deliver the impact that you care about.
Fantastic, Sophie. That's very convincing. I think those who were what is it called? Those who were doubting whether public service is for them. I think you really convinced them. But you haven't shared with us some of the challenges that you faced.
In working in the public sector?
Absolutely.
I mean,
as a young person.
As a young person working, well, by way of example, so I was privileged enough to have been promoted very quickly at a young age. And often when I entered a meeting room, I was expected to be carrying the tea. I was the person who wasn't expected to make a noise. I was expected to be the note taker. And in particular, I'm quite a small person and I have quite a youthful looking face. So people often underestimated who I was and the impact I could have. I suppose the thing I learned was, number one, back myself. I got there for a reason. And that means that I've been able to, there's a reason why I'm there. And the second thing is to have real confidence in your knowledge and your expertise. Don't try to do too many things at the same time. Be absolutely amazing at what you know you're amazing at, and people will see your value in that. I guess the other element of being in public service is you have to be objective and impartial, and that sometimes means working for organizations or for leaders who have been democratically elected but with whom you disagree. And actually that's a really powerful time to become more attuned to your values and understand what it is that's upsetting you, and also to think about compromise and how you can work collaboratively with people who you perhaps disagree with, as opposed to just kind of turning your back on them and leaving them. And that's really important in debates, which can sometimes be quite black and white in the media, actually finding the shades of grey and realizing the importance of partnerships.
Thank you so much. So next to Franco, your work with ISEC is very inspiring. You're literally present in almost all countries in the world, working to create opportunities for young people through internships and skills development. Unemployment continues to be a major challenge for young people globally. So how have you been able to address the employability gap? And what kind of partnerships have you created that have been instrumental in your work?
Thank you so much for your question, Vivian. And I think what you just pointed out and brought to our attention is a concerning topic right now for young people all over the world. We as ISEC partnered a couple months ago with the International Labour Organization to run a survey on COVID-19 and the impact on young people and their mental well-being. And one of the key stats, or one of the main insights that I found important to highlight and stress, and I think bring up to everyone's attention, is that right now, 1 out of 6 young people all over the world has stopped working since COVID-19 started. So that means that overall, we are having a huge gap of opportunities for development for young people. And we're right now facing a potential scenario where we can lose the whole talent and expertise of a generation. At the same time, as you mentioned, ISEC works to develop young leadership or youth leadership in everyone. That's what we believe. We believe that youth leadership can be developed in everyone. As Sophie said, it's not like something that you reach certain age and then appears. It can be work, it can be nurtured, it can be cultivated. So in our internship programs or our volunteer programs, when we're doing an analysis, normally we're around 40,000 of these opportunities yearly. Right now, 67% of those total of internships and opportunities have been impacted by COVID-19. So that means that we're talking about 30,000 people less that can benefit from these opportunities. So for now, our work towards how can we face this challenge and how can we still provide opportunities for young people to develop themselves has become a key question of the organization every single day. So what we're doing from one side, answering to your first question, is we're trying to go into the realm of taking every single opportunity that digitalization and connectivity can provide to us right now. We're trying to pivot the way we run our programs and trying to open a more inclusive access for young people towards remote internship programs, virtual internship programs, and local internship programs. Normally what ISEC would do, we would just be working through international exchanges, because we believe that in cross-cultural experiences is where a person can get more richness and add to their experience and their development. But right now we're challenging that because we see that what we're doing or what we've been doing for the last 72 years is not enough anymore. And we, as an organization that believe in youth leadership, need to respond with what young people needs right now. At the same time, we know and we have seen that 47% of young people, based on our survey with ILO, believe that their education, their capacity, and their skills have been hindered by the pandemic. So we've been trying to offer different spaces, such as our Global Leadership Day, which was a 24-hour conference hosted in 4 different time zones globally, where we were able to reach 10,000 unique viewers, 10,000 young persons that joined into this event and were there for at least 4 hours, each one of them, skilling themselves up and listening from organizations. What do they are looking right now in young people? How can they get more skilled up and more prepared for the future workforce? And also, how can themselves bring insights about the value, the things they believe that companies and organizations should be working right now? Now, moving to your second question, which is what kind of partnerships we're trying to establish right now in order to provide more of these opportunities. We are working through a cross-sectoral approach. We're not going only with companies. We're not going only with like-minded organizations as NGOs or international organizations, development agencies, or governments. We're trying to tackle each one of them in different ways. So we can ensure that in the future, young people have the opportunity to choose, and young people have the opportunity to access different fields that right now they are not able to. When people is looking for jobs right now, they're normally going to tech, to business, to finances. But as you mentioned, for example, through the work that Sophie's been doing, the public sector needs a youth perspective. We are seeing right now companies need young people to really get into their departments of human resources, diversity and inclusion, and start to make sure that youth representation is not a matter of tokenism. It's not just having young people numbers because we need them. It's because we need young people to really provide their opinions, to provide and voice out their voice, with fear of being redundant here, but at the same time, not stopping there, but turning that into actions and policies inside companies and inside different sectors that can change things. To close around my answer, I want to point out that in our latest version of our Youth Speak survey, which is a global youth survey run by ISEC, we started running it in July 2019, we have detected that 57% of youth population worldwide believe that by 2030, the world is going to be a better place. But at the same time, the rest of youth respondents, either they believe the world's going to get worse, or they're indifferent towards the situation that the world can get by this year. When we start to dive deep into this question, we ask, who do you think that is the major stakeholder that can change the world right now? And a surprisingly answer was the fact that they believe that more than governments, corporate organizations are the ones that right now have the power and have the tools to make a change in society. That's why I want to extend an invitation for young people, but also for organizations and corporations to see that including youth numbers into your workforce, including youth numbers into your departments in the different organizations and corporations you're leading, is not only about with making sure that you have a quota and you're fulfilling a quota where you have X number of young people, but it's actually giving these young people the space to voice out what they think and apply that into the policies, rules, regulations, and strategies the company and corporations has in order to actually make a change for future generations, so we can make sure that we can preserve our planet in the years to come. Because right now, as we've seen in the news, we're every single day closer to a global catastrophe. And young people believe that organizations have the power to make a change at this point.
Wow, thank you, Franco, for that passionate presentation. You scared me with the fast statistic. 1 out of 6 young people have stopped working since COVID started. But again, you gave me some hope when you say 57% of young people globally believe that by 2030, the world will be a better place. So the other 43%, it's our duty, you and I, and all of us, to go work with them so that we can give them hope, empower them, provide them with the skills so that they can help make the world a better place for themselves and also for the generation to come after us. Thank you again. Safoora, you lead an incredible portfolio at One Young World, working with young people from across the globe. How have you been engaging with young people in your community during this ongoing pandemic? And how have you been able to forge a win-win partnership with the private sector to create tangible and impactful opportunities for young people? And I'm glad that you're actually following Franco, because based on the survey that they put out there, they found out that young people believe that corporations have the ability to make the world a better place. So it would be great for us to hear from you how you've been able to work with the private sector, the corporations, to create opportunities for young people that are impactful and are tangible.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you, Vivian, because also Franco, that really did spark a really positive response with me, because there is a perception that corporates are very disconnected, I think, from the issues that are shaping our world. But I like to think that now they are moving in a more accountable direction, and are also seeing that moral imperative to be responsible for the communities in which they operate in, they serve, and well beyond. But in terms of the first part of your questions around what we do to support young leaders. So most people will know One Young World for the annual summit, which takes place in a different city every year. But really, our work begins after the summit, when the delegates graduate into our ambassador community. So our team work year-round to try and mobilize these 12,000, as I mentioned earlier, to really connect them with growth opportunities to give them platforms where they're around decision-making tables, as Sophie mentioned, which is so critical, is to really have that accurate representation, and effective representation, because they are the leaders. They are the experts. They are the ones on the ground delivering a lot of the work, and they're incredibly well-spoken. And I think up until now, I feel like there has been a shift, though, in terms of the perception of young people. There really has been a groundswell of legitimacy, I think, for people under the age of 30, under the age of 18, which has been amazing. So again, throughout the year, we continue to connect with this global community with our small but mighty team. But we really try now, especially in the wake of the pandemic, to connect them, I mean, virtually more than ever. We've now become Zoom experts at this point, but really it's been an exercise in trying to understand what are the gaps, where are people struggling the most. Obviously, mental health is a huge issue. How can we basically try and service that need in terms of job loss and access to opportunities, as Franco mentioned. We're seeing, again, a huge drop in those as well. So how can we connect them with paid opportunities? How can we publicize their work as well to further give them credibility and help them push along? So we do a lot of this kind of hand-stitched, bespoke support that we provide, but we also do a lot of events as well. So since the pandemic, we've had thousands of young people across the world participate in our events focused on a range of topics, but we've also put them forward for prestigious awards. We've really tried to raise their visibility, because as their work shifts, and this kind of leads us into kind of the support from the corporate space, many of them are looking for funding. We have grassroots workers, as I mentioned, but we have entrepreneurs, social entrepreneurs, people who are working on the front line of the COVID response. So it's really been our duty, because we're placed in this really exceptional sweet spot between the public sector, international organizations, and the private sector to really build that bridge. We have over 200 partners who send delegates to the annual summit, and we are a very pro-business forum, because we do believe in that transformative power of business, and that they move faster. And so we really need to leverage the resources that they have and place them in the right place. So as a result of obviously this huge need in our community, we launched the COVID-19 Young Leaders Fund, which we've launched with several partners who have generously donated to us to basically get emergency funding out to so far over 40 young leaders, with grants ranging from 2,000 up to 10,000. So we are now emerging as a huge grant making body for these initiatives, which range from anything from hygiene and sanitation provision to food relief, to support for the most marginalized communities as well. That's a huge priority for us. Indigenous communities, refugee populations, in every part of the world, from the Pacific to Latin America and everything in between. So that has been a huge focus of our work. Congratulations to Dan, of course, for managing all of that for my team. But documenting that impact is also vital, because to be able to give, as I say, I keep using the word legitimacy, but to extend that legitimacy, the data and numbers need to be there. So we really try and equip our ambassadors with the know-how and also the backing and the facts that, again, they can go out to secure more funding, because without it, it becomes incredibly difficult for them to access more capital. But then again, with our private sector partners, a huge source of our funding distribution has been through a program called Lead 2030. And this session is focused on the SDGs. Well, there is almost a $3 trillion funding gap to achieve the SDGs, and I know that has been set well far back as a result of the pandemic. The Goalkeepers report released by the Gates Foundation just this week was saying that we've set back 25 years of healthcare provision in 25 weeks. I think the numbers are not quite there yet, but I can imagine they're pretty huge. And so Lead 2030 was born out of a need to kind of address this whole gaping hole in there. And so we have now partnered with 11 businesses who have each committed $50,000 cash to young entrepreneurs under the age of 30, which now has comprised of 1.1 million worth of funding to date. And this is really about getting cash into the hands of the young leaders who need it to scale their work. And so that has really been our huge initiative, to try and rally that private sector support. Big multinationals that typically are quite distant, but we're really trying to connect them more with those leaders on the ground, because there is that bridge that is missing. And so One Young World, like so many of the organizations that are on here, continue to act as that medium to really work for this community, this young community, who are delivering the numbers. We do our impact reporting every year, and since 2010, there have been over 26 million people impacted by One Young World-led initiatives. And I can tell you that as a conservative number, and I'm sure each and every one of us can think of a handful of incredible leaders. And so it's really about, how do we continue that movement in the right direction? Of course, there's the impending economic slump, which has well begun, which we don't know how that really is going to affect our work, but we really hope that we can continue to pump the resources in the right direction.
Thank you so much, Safoora. So Franco, I think the next forum, you need to bring Safoora to share more about
you and me, Franco.
engaging the private sector, because we've seen that the actually private sector coming on board, and they're putting investment. They're just not talking, but walking the talk by putting the investment, and also wanting to help these young people develop their ventures and move from point A to point B. So thank you again, Safoora, for the incredible work that you're doing at One Young World, and also more so now during this crisis, through the emergency fund, creating opportunities, and also the funding that young people need to sustain their ventures, their social enterprises, because we know, based on the statistics that Franco has also shared with us, many young people are struggling at the moment, and will continue to struggle if we don't have more opportunities, and if we don't have more organizations like One Young World and ISEC and many others that are out there stepping up to the plate and reaching out to find these young people where they are, and asking them what kind of support that they need, and ensuring that they have the support, but also continue to monitor to ensure that they thrive in such environment that we live in. So thank you again for the work that you're doing. So Joseph, through your work with EY Foundation, how have you supported young entrepreneurs, and what are some of the programs that you have put in place to cushion them during COVID-19? I think that's an interesting question, given Safoora's contribution to our discussion. And then to your second question, what are some of the challenges that you have noticed with some of the entrepreneurs that you're working with, and how have you addressed them to ensure that they thrive?
Well, thank you very much for that question, and I must say it feels like I've got a front row seat to an excellent conversation here. It's a great privilege. So the EY Foundation really tries to put young people at the sort of heart and head of everything we do, and that means that we always bear them in mind and also give them a say in the decision-making process. So we've not only got the Youth Advisory Board, which I chair, we've got 2 of those members of that board on the main board of trustees as well. So every single step of the way, right from the very high strategy level through to operational day-to-day tasks, young people are always consulted. In terms of your question relating to the pandemic, it has been a huge challenge. You know, we know that young people bear the brunt of economic recessions, let alone the health crisis that this period has been. And we know that if people are out of work during economic crisis, that can have a scarring effect on those young people, but leading to lower future earnings in their career. So what the foundation has tried to do, and particularly with entrepreneurs, is help them maintain that sort of training and skills that we normally provide in person through an integrated online model. We've converted all of our programs over to digital in the same sort of way that we've converted this event over to digital, and we've made sure that we can carry on supporting them despite the obvious restrictions that the pandemic posed. On top of that, we are very conscious of the fact that this is an economic as well as a health crisis. So we're working with the government in schemes like Kickstart to try and support people and get as much help to them as possible by sort of that nexus between the corporate sector and the government and the charitable sector, trying to act as sort of an intermediary between all 3 sectors while helping young people. So with that in mind, we have a program called Accelerate, which works specifically with entrepreneurs, works with social entrepreneurs in particular as well, to try and help them develop businesses that, yes, are incredibly successful and provide career development for those young people. Again, these are young people from poorer backgrounds, so we want to make sure they have the same opportunities as anyone else would have, but also that they are keeping one eye on their communities as well. It's not all simply about an individual success, it's also about succeeding so that you can help others like yourself. And that is really very much the ethos of the EY Foundation in a nutshell, and it's something that we aspire to think about at every single level, which is, you know, part of the reason why we ensure that young people are actually decision makers here as well as the stakeholders.
Thank you so much. But I had one more question for you that I think you haven't answered. Some of the challenges that you've noticed with your young entrepreneurs or social entrepreneurs in your network, and how are you addressing them? I know you've shared about Accelerate, platform program that you've created for social entrepreneurs, but I want to also understand some of the challenges that you've noticed with your entrepreneurs and how you're helping them overcome that so that they can be able to thrive.
Challenges relating to the pandemic, or challenges generally?
No, generally to the entrepreneurs and social entrepreneurs that you're working with.
Yeah, so social entrepreneurs and social entrepreneurs. You know, I think there is an element of individual contribution to being an entrepreneur. It's something to do with personality, it's something to do with the mindset that an individual has. But I also think that there are clearly external things that can get in the way of someone who would otherwise make a fantastic entrepreneur. And that can be if you aren't able to acquire management and leadership skills early on in life, then you perhaps don't have the confidence or the knowledge to be able to start a business, even when you're young, which is typically when someone makes that leap to become an entrepreneur. So our foundation is very much focused on skills and on confidence to use those skills in a sort of corporate setting and be able to say, yes, I may be in my 20s or I may even be younger, but I have the confidence because I know that I'm prepared to be in charge of an organization, or like another of the speakers said, speak up in a meeting. Another thing that is obviously a challenge is funding and having access to a network of people who are funders. Now, because of giving someone money in order to start a business is a risk. And if you're adding a charitable element and saying that we're working with people who are perhaps further away from the labour market, well, that could be perceived as an additional risk. And what we try and tell people that we work with is actually that's not a risk, actually it's an opportunity, because the very fact that these people are further away from the labour market means that they are precisely the people with potential that hasn't been tapped into. And these are the type of people that we want to say, bring them into the fold, bring them into your networks, because they will have perspectives and they will have ideas that you have not heard precisely because they've never been given that opportunity before.
Thank you so much for that. And to our audience, you have an opportunity to ask the panelists a question, so please send in your questions or prepare your questions. Next to Mete, our youngest politician in this discussion. So at such a young age, you've had an, sorry?
So not young anymore.
Yes, you are.
Yes, you are. You're young at heart. You're still a youth. So at such a young age, you've had an impressive experience and impact in the political space. So why do you think it's vital for young people to be engaged in the political arena? And what are some of the challenges that you faced venturing into the political space as a young person? And then I have another question for you. How have you used your position to influence change and create room for other young people?
Yeah, I mean, firstly, thank you so much for your kind introduction, and also it's great to sort of listen to all the other panelists and to see all the great work that they're doing. I know already of some of the work that both Safoora and Sophie does, and you know, it's inspiring to hear of everyone else's sort of work and what they're doing to make a difference in sort of the lives of thousands of young people across the world. So I guess for me, you know, the reason why it's important that young people do have a voice in politics or are engaged in politics is because, you know, we spoke about lots of different issues, and, you know, lots of people are involved in, you know, helping, I guess, tackle many different goals of the SDG sort of aims. And, you know, these issues directly have a huge impact, have a huge profound impact on the lives of young people. You know, when you look at the level of education that you receive at very early years, research shows that that will have a huge impact on your life, particularly around the outcomes in terms of what job you end up in, you know, the type of family that you build, you know, your level of confidence. So all these things are very, very interconnected. And what's really important is obviously that, you know, we live, well, in the UK anyway, and, you know, in different parts of the world, I'd like to think that we want to seek towards living in a representative democracy where you have different groups of society, you know, who represent different groups in Parliament and in those chambers, or whatever those chambers are defined as. And, you know, Siddarth very sort of, you know, eloquently sort of put it in terms of, you know, creating spaces for people from, you know, not just looking at people as this historic sort of, you know, very binary option as, you know, men and women or this and that or whatever it is. You know, I think it's a very simplistic understanding of how human beings work and sort of their lived experiences and their diversity. And I think it's very important that young people have a key part of that. Now, when you look at, you know, some of the biggest changes that we've had in the past, we know that young people have played a huge role in bringing about change. And I think it's important that they are reflected in that. So for me, I guess, you know, some of the challenges around why young people don't necessarily or are sort of perceived to be less engaged in politics. I don't think that young people don't care about issues. Of course, they care about whether they've got a decent roof over their shoulders or whether they've got a job that pays them basic respect or dignity. I think the issue is whether they have, you know, whether they see traditional forms of politics as a vehicle to address the issues that they care about. And partly the reason why they don't is obviously because, one, we're not educated about how democracy works to its full extent. Secondly, obviously we just spoke about representation. So if we look at Parliament in your respective country, if it doesn't look and sound like the communities that you seek to represent, then you're less likely to engage with it. So for example, in the case of the UK, you know, the number of women in politics is still very low. Yes, it's increasing, but it's nowhere near where it should be. And, you know, we should also get ourselves of this mindset of saying we should have at 50% women. No, that's at the very minimum, you know, like, it's not let's just get 50% women and then, yeah, we've done our bit. I think we need to really think about how we sort of don't become complacent. Then you look at people in terms of ethnic minorities, people with disabilities, and these are just, you know, visual, you know, diversity. Then you look at class and lived experiences as well. So I think it's really important that, you know, when people are aspiring to look, as a young person, I grew up in a very deprived borough in the UK, and when I used to look at my council, I used to look at people and be like, it doesn't really represent me, and that's why I never really engaged with them. So in the end, I said, let me stand to be a politician. And then the final thing is, obviously, I think that, politicians have, let's be honest, have let down a lot of people. There's been lots of promises that have been made over generations and just hasn't sort of materialized. And, some of the symptoms of that is, Trump or Brexit in the UK, without being too political. So I think it's very important that we have to understand that, yes, young people are very interested in politics, but I think also democracy needs to be sort of reinvented, reimagined, especially with COVID and everything that's happening, to sort of appeal to young people. But I think we need to be a key part of that. In terms of myself and what I've been doing since I've been elected, so it's been a whole 7 years now. It's been a very long time, and it feels much longer than 7 years, by the way. I guess, for me, what I'm really proud of is, the community I'm from is a very, and I spoke about this at the One Young World Forum in London in last year. Well, it feels like years ago now, but it was only last year. But for me, I'm very proud of where I'm from. Hackney is a very diverse borough. It's a borough which is, it was ranked the worst place to live out of 464 local authorities in the UK in 2006. And it's gone through huge economic growth over the last 15 years. Where I am sitting right now is the tech hub of London, where the Olympics were in 2012. And within this growth, what I'm really passionate is about how do we redistribute wealth to make sure that it actually works for the locals in Hackney, and it doesn't just sort of, we have all these amazing houses that are being built, amazing jobs that are being created, but then people are just moving in, and then the actual locals are being sort of pushed out of the area. So I led an inquiry into how we can tackle socioeconomic inequality and really build an inclusive economy. And as a result of that program, we've got thousands of people into jobs, particularly young people, into the creative and tech sectors in Hackney, where a lot of jobs are. Amazon's headquarters are based in Hackney. And again, working with them around their apprenticeship scheme, around their apprenticeship levy, putting it back into young people from Hackney. So these are the things that I think I'm really proud of. And I think, if it wasn't for, I'm not just saying myself, but there are other young councillors now who've come onto Hackney Council too. If it wasn't for a group of us who were sort of, shouting about these things, talking about it at every meeting, I don't necessarily think that, it's not to say that, our colleagues aren't, don't care, but it's just that lack of awareness, right? It's like, you need women to talk about women's issues, you need young people to talk about young people's issues, you need, you can't talk on behalf of other communities, although it's important to have allyship too. So I think that's the reason why it's very important and healthy to have young people's voices involved. And what Sophie is doing, for example, with the G7, I think is very important. Like where you've got the world's most powerful leaders, and to really meaningfully engage young people in that process. So it's not just, as Sophie said rightly, it's not just about having young people there. Oh yeah, this is what we think. It's actually about giving them a set of tasks and responsibility, a bit of budget to support them and say, okay, you shape it now, And I think that's what real sort of engagement looks like. And, my colleagues here on the panel have spoke very, as I said, there's lots of examples of how that's been done around the world.
Thank you so much, Mete. I could stay the whole day and listen to you because this is an area that I'm very keen on learning more, but we're running out of time. So I have one question for Siddarth before I do a quick round with all the other panelists. So Siddarth, you have exactly 1 minute to answer this question from the audience. So one of the attendees has asked, I'm only 7, so many adults don't take me seriously yet, but I wanted to know how can we fight with our voices, our connections, and our wallets to make sure no one is left behind? My generation is excited to lead the way, but how can we create change now?
Thank you so much for that
1 minute.
question. Okay, thank you so much for that question, Paisley. So first of all, congratulations on first making to the forum at the age of 7. It's really, really inspiring. But when talking about, the connections that youth can make and the way in which we can pioneer change, I think it's important that youth connect with other youth and connect with like-minded people in order to facilitate a conversation between ourselves and then engage in partnerships as Ms. Biglari, Mr. Coben, Ms. Daud, and Mr. Perez all were talking about during today's panel discussion. It's making sure first we as a community are united, and then approaching other groups of people, other organizations, and making sure we have our voices heard. So I think at a very young age, it's important that you connect with other people in your community and ask them how they feel about various issues inside of the world. Ask them what their opinions are on politics. Ask them what their opinions are on what the country is doing, or what a group of countries like the United Nations is doing, and provide their perspective. Because ultimately, more than taking physical action, youth want to be heard. And I think that's one of the major things that everyone needs to start engaging in. Just listening and giving them a voice is much better than anything else you could potentially do. Because ultimately, we're often told that, oh, hush, your children don't speak right now. But it's more of, oh, let me listen because you have a different view on this type of subject. And I also think that youth provide an unpolluted view on the subject as well, because we're not exposed to so many different things. So we haven't seen a lot of the things that adults do and are able to provide a more unbiased perspective. So just conversation, I think, is the best piece of advice I could give you.
Thank you so much, Siddarth. So we have exactly 4 minutes. So you each have 30 seconds to answer my next question so that we can wrap up. So how are you going to use your platform, your networks, in this decade of action to ensure that we achieve the Sustainable Development Goals come 2030? So Sophie, Safoora, Franco, Mete, 30 seconds each.
Okay, and I'll stick to my 30 seconds. I personally believe that the biggest impact I can have in enabling young people to help deliver the SDGs is creating more opportunities for young people to influence international and multilateral decision making. So a really big part of what I am continuing to do is to advocate on behalf of the youth voice at the highest level. That includes the G7, it includes the G20, it includes COP26, where actually there's only 10 spaces allocated to young people, despite the fact that young people are the biggest advocates for climate change action. So that's what I'll do on my behalf.
Perfect. So I can go next.
Thank you, and all the best with the G7 and G20 preparations.
Perfect. So from IASEC and from my side, we're going to keep working on our tireless efforts to engage more young people with the SDGs. Our latest survey has also revealed that only 36% of youth respondents know what the SDGs are and how can we actually measure them. So we're going to keep providing spaces, forums, events, and programs that can engage young people and can not only give them a space to know and engage with the SDGs, but actually to take action.
Thank you.
I think I would just echo what both of them said and just say that, One Young World represents a community of ambassadors that are, there's 12,000, but there are millions other young people in the world, and we want to make sure that we can also serve them too, even if they can't attend our summit or they don't get a scholarship place to attend, if they don't have that title. But we want to open our doors to them and ensure that we can at least help connect them with opportunities that will further their growth, that they will continue to learn and engage and connect with each other, because we need every ounce of help that we can all get. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sophie.
And I guess for me, I think, whilst I'm still doing what I'm doing, I think I will continue to push the boundaries to make sure that young people's voices are heard, both through my life, my say, and my own my own channels. And I think it's very important that sometimes you have people like me who play that role, who can sort of be really, really challenging to these people, so that, we can achieve the wider aim, which is to get young people, ultimately, their voices heard.
So thank you all for the vibrant conversation. I wish we had the whole day, because there's still a lot to learn from each and every one of you. But I'm very grateful for your time. I'm very grateful for the work that you're doing in your communities. I know you're just a representative of the incredible group and network of young people that are out there who are also championing change in the society. So keep up the good work that you're doing, continue collaborating, continue learning from one another, and take this conversation to your communities and to the other young leaders that you're working with. Please be safe.
Thank you very much for having us at World Humanitarian Forum.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, bye.
Thank you.